Squares and square roots. To square a number, you multiply the number by itself. So if I'm going to square 8, I will multiply 8 by itself, 8 by 8, and I get 64. So we would write that as 8 squared, or 8 to the power of 2, and of course equals 64. We can do this with any number. So 12 squared means 12 times itself, and 12 times 12 is 144. The square root of a number is a number which, when squared, gives you the first number. So it's the inverse operation of squaring. The square root sign looks like this. Okay? So if you see square root 64, what that means is what number times itself will give me 64, the number inside the square root sign. And we know from our first example that that's 8. So 8 times 8 equals 64, so the square root of 64 is 8. We wouldn't write it like this because I'm just using it as an example, but of course the square root 64 is 8. And the square root of 144, this means what number times itself will give us 144, and that is 12. 12 times 12 is 144, so the square root of 144 is 12. All right, let's square these numbers. 1 squared, that means 1 times 1. 1 times 1 is just 1. 5 squared, this means 5 times 5. 5 times 5 is 25. 7 squared, this means 7 times 7. That's 49. And 14 squared, that means 14 times 14. Might have to figure that one out. It's 196. Now let's find the square roots of these numbers. Remember, this is the square root sign. So this is the square root of 25. What number times itself will give us 25? And that is 5. Square root of 49. What number times itself will give us 49? That's 7. Square root of 64, we already did it. It's 8. And the square root of 1, that means what times what equals 1? 1. 1 times 1 gives us 1. Okay, so let's put this into a little bit of an application. The area of this square is 225 square centimeters, or 225 centimeters squared, right here. Okay, so we know the area of this space, this shape, and it is a square. So that means this length is the same as this length is the same as this length is the same as this length. They're all the same length. So what is the length of each side? That's what the question is asking us. Okay, so to do that, it would be helpful if we knew what the formula for area is. We can write this out using words. Area equals the side length times the other side length. And when it's a square, that means you have the side length of one times the side length of the other, and these are both the same in this case. So we can rewrite that as area equals side length squared. That is where these units come from, because we're multiplying some length in centimeters by another length in centimeters. So centimeters times centimeters gives us centimeters squared. Okay, so we need to find the solution here. Well, we know that the area is 225 square centimeters. So we know that 225 squared centimeters equals the side length squared. Okay, so 225 represents one length times another length, right? The side length squared And let's write this a little bit smaller. Let's use L for length. Okay, so we'll say this is L, and this one is also L here. So that's length. So we can say that length squared equals 225 if we write this out as a math equation. So we want to just find L. So how do we find L? Well, what we do is we find the square root of 225. Because what does that mean? The square root of 225 means a number times itself gives us the value inside. And that's what we want. It's exactly what we want right here. We want L times L, a number times itself, L times L, to equal 225. So the square root of 225 will give us L if L squared equals 225. Okay, and that's why we say these are inverse operations, squared and square root. So the square root of 225, might have to use our calculator. If we do, we find out that it is 15. So what is the length of each side? Each side, the side length is 15 centimeters.